Hello students, welcome to today's English class. I am Rupna Ravindran, Assistant Professor of English at Government Degree College, Chevalla in Rangareddy district of Telangana state. Today I am going to talk about the prose Happy People written by William Ralph Ing. William Ralph Ing is a British writer. He was born in 1860 and he died in 1954. He was a Church of England clergyman. So he came from the background of clergyman family. He was a scholar and also a social critic. He followed the philosophies of Plotinus and Christian mysticism. So these philosophies spoke about the oneness of a soul with God. In Plotinus philosophy, they talked about the one, the intellect, and the soul. Whereas in Christian mysticism, they talked about the union of soul with that of the God. He is a prolific writer and he has written lot of essays and books. Let us go to the next slide to read more about the biographical details of the writer William Ralph Ing. He was born on June 6, 1860 at Craig, Yorkshire in England, and he died on February 26, 1954 at Wallingford in Berkshire, that's in England. Okay, so his father was a curate of Craig. That means his father was an assistant of a vicar in the church. And later his father became a provost of Worcester College in Oxford. That means that his father later became the head of this particular college, that is the Worcester College at Oxford. So he is coming from a similar kind of background already. So his father has set a background which is also from a family of clergymen, and he already has a background of being the head of certain colleges in Oxford. Ing was initially educated at home by his parents until he entered the Eton on scholarship. So Ing was educated at Eton and at King's College, Cambridge. Ing served as Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral from 1911 to 1934. That is a very important thing that we have to note. So he was called Gloomy Dean. He was Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. So due to his depressive nature, he was called Gloomy Dean. So coming back to his education, in 1879, he went to King's College, Cambridge, where he won numerous scholarships and prizes. He took first class honors in classical tripos. He returned to Eton in 1884 and there he became assistant master at Eton for a period of 4 years, that is from 1884 to 1880. He is a fellow of King's College. He was a fellow of King's College during the period of 1886 to 1888. In 1888, he was elected Fellow and Tutor of Hertford College in Oxford. There he taught Latin and Greek classics and he also published a certain studies over there. This was during the period of 1888 to 1904, and he was also a fellow of Jesus College and Lady Margaret Professor of Divinity. This Jesus College is in Cambridge. He was a Bampton lecturer in 1889. These lectures were published as Christian Mysticism in 1899. So his that is one of his famous collection, that is Christian Mysticism. It was published in the year 1899. So it is his first of the total 30 books which talks about religion and social criticism. Christian Mysticism was a widely read book and it launched Ing's career as an influential writer on religion. In 1904, Ing left Oxford to become a vicar of a Church of All Saints, Ennismore Gardens. The same year, he got married to a lady named Mary Catherine Spooner. So, during his stay in Cambridge, he continued his researches on Christian mysticism, and he also continued his long study on Plotinus and Neoplatonism philosophies. By 1911, when appointed Dean of St. Paul's, he had already written several books. We have already mentioned about the book Christian Mysticism, published in the year 1899. What are the other books that are mentioned here? Truth and Falsehood in Religion. That is another book written by St. Paul. That is another book written by William Ralph Ing in the year 1906. And another one is Faith, published in 1909. So these three books were to become theological classics. At St. Paul's, where he remained until his retirement in 1934, he became a national figure. So over the period of 25 years, he contributed to the London Evening Standard. He wrote a lot of books, around 35 books in the areas of mysticism, Christianity, Platonism, ethics, and also contemporary issues. He was one of the most popular English journalists during the time, and as we have already mentioned, he was given the tag the Gloomy Dean by the Daily Mail. What are the books that he is famous for? The Religious Philosophy of Plotinus and Some Modern Philosophies of Religion, published in 1914. The Philosophy of Plotinus, published in 1918. Outspoken Essays, published in 1919. The Idea of Progress, published in 1920. The Victorian Age, published in 1922. Personal Religion and Life of Devotion, published in 1924. So we understood that William Ralph Ing is a British writer. So he has a family background of clergymen of church. So he has also worked as Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, and his father was also an assistant to vicar in a church, and also he was the head of Worcester College, Oxford. So his family background was that of a Christian family, which was closely related to church, and he believed in Christian mysticism. So these are the important things that we have to be mindful about the writer William Ralph Ing. Now let us go to the prose Happy People. So we have a prose titled Happy People, written by William Ralph Ing. So this prose explores the question of what makes people happy. So in this prose, he probes into the question what makes people happy. He finds out reasons for what makes people happy, and he also finds out the answer for the question who are considered to be happy people. So he takes lot of instances, he takes lot of examples to convince and to make it clear who are happy people. He writes that some consider the young as the happiest, while others opine that old people are happy. So he takes examples of people who follow the concept that young people are happiest, and who follow the concept that old people are happiest. So he takes quotations from famous writers like Robert Browning and all. We'll read that when we read the essay, we'll discuss that. Referring to the endless discussion on whether being unmarried or married, or whether religion and charity has any bearing on person's happiness, Ing makes the famous statement, the happiest people seem those who have no particular reason for being happy except the fact that they are so. So in the concluding statement that Ing makes is that happy people are those who do not have any particular reason for being happy, but they are simply so. His essay suggests that faith and trust in God can enhance one's state of happiness. So, coming from a background of a family related to Christianity and church and all, he suggests that faith and trust in God can enhance one's state of happiness. So here we have the prose Happy People. The writer is William Ralph Ing. So what shall we do? We'll read it paragraph by paragraph and let us discuss it. The wiser man who wrote the so-called Proverbs of Solomon says the heart knoweth its own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with its joy. We really know very little about the people whom we meet. We see their faces, which are not much more than masks, but we cannot read their hearts. Robert Browning thanks God that the meanest of his creatures has two soul sides, one to face the world with, or in that rare thing, a perfect friendship, that the veil partially drawn aside. And even then, we do not lay bare our hearts entirely. So, this is the introductory paragraph of the prose Happy People written by William Ralph Ing. So, in the first line, he mentions about King Solomon and his Proverbs of Solomon. Who is King Solomon? Yes, he is a very wealthy and wise king of Israel. So, his rule was from 970 BC to 931 BC. His name is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, and also in Quran. You might have heard about the judgment of Solomon, where two mothers come to Solomon with a baby. So both of them tell that baby belongs to them. They are the mothers of baby. So a baby can't have two mothers. So Solomon has to judge which one is the real mother of the baby. So what does he decide? He asks to cut the baby into two and give each part to one mothers. So the real mother couldn't accept this fact, and she burst into tears and she requested Solomon not to cut the baby into pieces but give it to the other woman. So from that judgment, Solomon understands who the real mother is. So Solomon is known for this wise judgment. So he is a very wise king of Israel. So in this essay, what does he says? He says that only our heart knows its bitterness. Whatever bitterness we have in our life, whatever sadness in our life, only our heart knows. Our face cannot express it. And a stranger who passes by will not be able to intermeddle with its joy. A stranger will not be able to understand what is going on in our heart looking at our face. We really know very little about the people whom we meet. We really cannot understand the feelings of a stranger. When we see their faces, we won't be able to make out what is there in their heart, what kind of feelings are running in their heart. We can only see them, their face are only masks. That is what Solomon says. Robert Browning thanks God that meanest of his creatures has two soul sides. So who is Robert Browning? Robert Browning is an English poet, and he is also a playwright. He wrote poems during the Victorian period. He is known for his humorous writings, not direct humor, but it is kind of dark humor, and he used to write a social commentary also. He is famous for his dramatical monologue. So he is a very famous writer. What does he says? He says that the meanest of his creatures has soul sides. two soul sides. So every person, every human being has two sides in her soul. One is to face the world with, and the other is revealed only in a close relationship. Only your close people can understand what your real character is. Not a stranger can understand your real feelings. He or she will not be able to understand what is going inside your heart. Even then, we do not lay bare our hearts entirely. So we will not reveal our secrets to a newly acquainted person. We will not tell our secrets to a newly acquainted person. Also, only close friends can understand our real feelings. So let us go to the next paragraph. Who are the really the happiest people? So that is the epic question that he carries in this prose. What is the question? Who are really the happiest people? It is odd that we have no answer ready. For with most of us, happiness is our being's end and aim. So the main aim, the main goal of our life is to be happy. Rest are all purposes to be happy, purposes to reach our goal. We are sometimes in doubt whether our own balance is on the right side or the wrong side. Looking back, I think I can separate the years when I was happy and those when I was unhappy. The time I should have judged differently. We are never either so happy or so miserable as we suppose ourselves to be. So when the speaker, that is when the writer looks back to his past, he remembers exactly the moments when he was very happy and when he was very sad. And from his experiences, he concludes that none of our lives are extremely happy or extremely sad. All our lives are a mixture of emotions. So we have sadness, and this sadness will pass, and surely it will pay for a way for happiness. So that is how it is. The successful man generally tells us that he was happiest while he was still struggling for success, or sometimes before he discovered that an ambitious career was open to him. As a rule, the game of life is worth playing, but struggle is the prize. So, what is the point that the writer makes in this paragraph? He says that the person who does hard work is happy until he gets success, until he tastes success, he'll be very happy. So, before he gets into an ambitious career, he will be very happy because he is very positive. He is working towards a goal. That is the reason why he will be happy. It is generally supposed that young are happier than the old. This seems to be very doubtful. So, most of the people say that young people are happier than the old. But for the writer, for William Ralph Ing, this concept is a little doubtful. Young people are often very unhappy, he says, torn by conflict elements to their characters, which after a time come to some kind of misunderstanding. So for him, young people are in a state of mess, are in a state of chaos. They are not completely happy. They are all often unhappy, torn between different kinds of situations and different kinds of emotions. Robert Browning boldly claims that old age is the best of life, and some old people agree with him. So he again goes back to the Victorian writer Robert Browning, and he says that like me, like the writer, Robert Browning also claims that it is not young people but old people who are very happy, and there are certain old people who agrees with him. The married are supposed to be happier than the single. They are certainly less prone to commit suicide. So these are all the claims that the writer, that is William Ralph Ing, makes throughout the essay Happy People. So to justify his comments, to justify his point of view, he brings forth a certain other writer's point of view as well, certain quotations as well. So here he says that married people are very happy than people who are not married. They do not, what is the reason? Because married people do not commit suicide like young people, like single people. But suicide is not a very good test, and it has been pointed out that married people with no children are not much less suicidally inclined than bachelors and spinsters. Still, as a rule, marriage is the happiest state. It all depends upon whether the pair is well matched, and very bad choices are, I think, the exception. So in this paragraph, he makes the point that married people are happy even if they have children or if they don't have children. Their state of marriage is happier than that of people who are not married. So the reason why he says so is that married people do not commit much of suicide, it seems, according to his statistics. That is the reason why he says that married people are happier than unmarried. On the whole, the happiest people seem to be those who have no particular cause for being happy except the fact that they are so a good reason, no doubt. So the happiest people are simply happy. They do not have any reason to be happy, but it is their way of behavior or their attitude towards life that makes them happy always. So there is no doubt about it. And you might have observed certain people are very positive, they are very happy, they are very strong and they can face boldly all the difficult situations in life. But certain other people are very negative and they feel sad even for little things. And yet I should not choose a naturally contented temperament as my first request from a fairy godmother. It would be unfortunate if I said I wish to be the happiest man in England and promptly found myself locked up in an asylum, a cheerful lunatic who believed himself to be the Emperor of China. After talking about happiness and after discussing who are really happy people and what are the reasons for their happiness, this writer says that he doesn't want to be very contented because if he say that he is the happiest man in England, then people would think that he is a lunatic. Lunatic means he is mentally challenged. He is a mad person, and people would lock him up in an asylum. For all we know to the contrary, the happiest man in England may be a madman, and none of us would wish to change places with him. So a person who says that he is extremely happy would definitely not be sane. He will be insane. He will certainly have some mental problems. He will be a madman, as the writer says. And even if the always cheerful person is perfectly sane, he is without the splendid spur which most men need if they are to do much with their lives. So even if the person is normal and even if he is extremely happy, he will not have that splendid spur, he will not have that spark which make his life more fruitful. That is what he says. He from happiness he goes towards depression. He moves towards depression, and he says that it is depression or it is sadness that has created a lot of great works in literature. George Borrow, the author of Lavengro, thus addresses those who suffer from depression. So George Borrow is an English writer again. He has written lots of novels and travel books. His book Lavengro is a classic novel. It was written in 19th century and it is autobiographical in nature. So he asks, How dost thou know that this dark principle is thy best friend? He asked in Lavengro, how do you know that depression is my best friend? It may be the mother of wisdom and great works. It is the dread of horror of that night which makes the pilgrim hasten on his way. Thou wouldst be joyous, wouldst thou then be a fool? What great work was ever a result of joy? So he says that this depression is the greatest companion of a writer, of a person who wants to create literary works, because a happy person has never written anything worthwhile in literature. So all the great works of literature have resulted from a sadness or from discontentment or depression. What great work has ever a result of joy? The puny one, who have been the wise ones, the mighty ones, the conquering ones on earth. The joyous, I believe not. So all the great persons, all the wise persons, the mighty kings, the conquerors, the emperors, all are unsatisfied people, uncontented people, not very happy people. The happy people haven't achieved anything in life. They just pass their life contented. But the sad people, those who are not contented, will try to achieve more, and those kinds of people have got big names in the world. So this is a rhetorical statement. This is just my views. I don't want any answer from you. Rhetorical means a question that is asked to produce an effect, to have a bang. He started from happiness and he has now moved on to depression. So he just want to make a statement rather than to get information from the readers. But I have noticed it with surprise how often the biographies of great men reveal that they were subject to frequent and severe fits of depression. So I've read many biographies of great men. All those biographies reveal that these kinds of great men were subjected to severe fits of depression. They were very sad, discontented during certain period in their life, which the world knows nothing of. But we are not aware of those kinds of sad days in their life. Perhaps it is only shallow natures who never feel the tragedy of existence. I can sympathize with the man who wrote, "Send me hence 1,000 miles from a face which always smiles." So a person has written, he has asked somebody to send him far away from a person who always smiles. So he doesn't want to be very happy all the time. Those kinds of people cannot create anything fruitful. So he doesn't want to be in company of those kinds of happy people. That's why he is asking others to take him away from that kind of people. And yet, those who might take comfort from Barrow's praise of melancholy have to remember that the Sermon of the Mount goes far towards ranking worry as one of the deadly sins. So, Sermon on the Mount is a collection of sayings and teachings of Jesus Christ, which comes in the Old Testament. So, in that Sermon on the Mount, they have ranked worry along with 7 deadly sins. So you might have heard about the 7 deadly sins. Those are the cardinal sins. That is the classification of certain bad qualities according to the Christian teaching. So the 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, wrath, envy, gluttony, lust, and sloth. So, a Christian, a believer of Christianity should avoid all these 7 deadly sins. They are quite opposite to the 7 heavenly virtues. So, the Sermon on the Mount have also talked about ranking worry as one of deadly sins. Worry means anxiety. Spinoza agrees. Spinoza is a philosopher. He is a Dutch philosopher. very important in 17th century philosophical ideas. So Spinoza agrees that sadness is never justifiable. He says the medieval monks, who must have known the moral dangers of boredom, placed among the seven deadly sins one which called acedia. They describe it as a compound of dejection, sloth, and irritability, which makes a man feel that no good is worth doing. And certain people feel so worthless. It is the combination of dejection, sloth, and over irritability, which makes a person feel that he is not good, or he is not worth of doing anything. We have forgotten the word, and when we were attacked by the thing, we blame our nerves or our lives. But perhaps the monks were right. Religion is a great source of happiness because it gives us the right standard of values and enables us to regard our troubles as a light affliction which is but for a moment. So, being a religious person, and this writer, William Ralph Ing, says that religion is a great source of happiness. So it helps us to be in the right standard of values, and it also enables us to get rid of our troubles, because we put all our troubles on the feet of our God. Believers, that is what believers do. But the religious temperament is susceptible to more grievous fits of misery than any other. We hear sometimes of the gaiety which prevails in the monastery or in a nunnery. We have also seen the happiness that prevails in a monastery, that prevails among the Christian missionaries and also the nuns. Running away from life ought not to make people happy. So you can't just run away from life. That will never make your life happy. Unworldliness based on knowledge of the world is the finest thing on earth, but unworldliness based on ignorance of the world is less admirable. So you cannot be just ignorant about the worldly pleasure, and you cannot just run away from life, but in order to gain knowledge of the world, you can be a monk or a nun. You can turn towards the spirituality. Let us go to the next paragraph. Very different is the happiness enjoyed by a saint as the Hindu mystic and Christian missionary Sadhu Sundar Singh, whose life has just been written by Canon Streeter. Canon Streeter is a scholar and writer of theological subjects. So he has written about an Indian Christian missionary named Sadhu Sundar Singh. Sadhu Sundar Singh was actually born to a Sikh family in India, but he was very much impressed by Christianity, and during fateful incident, he found Jesus in front of him. It seems Jesus appeared before him when on one night he decided to kill himself. So this prompted him to get converted to Christianity. So when he was 16 years old, he became a Christian. He actually died in the Himalayas in 1929. So his life was very much eventful. And Canon Streeter has written about this saint, that is Sadhu Sundar Singh. It is one of the most fascinating books that I have read for a long time. That is what the writer says. The Sadhu has undergone every kind of persecution, including 2 days at the bottom of a well in Tibet, where he found himself among the decaying corpses of former victims. So when he was taken to Tibet, he was persecuted and put into a well where he could find lot of corpses, lot of dead bodies of former victims. But he was able to survive there. He lives the life of Saint Francis of Assisi and is as happy as that most of the Christ-like saints. So he lives the life of Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis of Assisi worked for leprosy patients, and even this person, that is Sadhu Sundar Singh, also worked for the benefit of leprosy patients. So that is why there is a comparison between them. And an English parlor maid, that is MAID, it is a typo error, parlor maid announced him to her mistress as follows: there is someone come to see you, ma'am. I can't make nothing of his name, but he looks as if he might be Jesus Christ. I urge my readers to read the Sadhu. It will make them feel better or worse, which is much the same thing in this connection. So this writer, that is William Ralph Ing, is asking his readers to read the book The Sadhu, to descend from these heights. The busy are happy than idle. So again he are coming to certain conclusions, that is busy people are happier than idle people who are sitting without any work. The man who has found this work much happier than man who has not found it. Recognition by others is essential for us. So in order to be happy, we need recognition from our friends, colleagues and all. But the strongest and the proudest virtue, I think I should put it third among the gifts which I should ask from a fairy godmother above mentioned. I should first ask for wisdom like King Solomon, and by wisdom I mean a just estimate of the relative value of things. My second wish would be for domestic happiness, and third for the approval of my fellows. So here he is talking about his three wishes, that he keeps it prepared for the godmother, fairy godmother. When the fairy appears and asks him for three wishes, first he will ask for wisdom, second he will ask for domestic happiness, happiness at home, and third is recognition of fellows. So these three things are very important in life. Your personal life should be very cool and very happy, otherwise that dissatisfaction will reflect on your mind and also on your face. And we definitely need approval from our fellow mates, our colleagues, our friends, etc. Next paragraph. Napoleon, that is Napoleon Bonaparte, the French statesman and military general who became very famous during the French Revolution. He was also the emperor of France from the period of 1804 to 1814. So what does he say? There are a lot of important quotations in the name of Napoleon Bonaparte. Here he has recommended a hard heart and a good digestion as the chief condition of happiness. So in order to be happy, you need to have a good stomach which digests everything, and also a very strong heart. I have nothing to say against the second, but a life without affection and sympathy could give only a very negative kind of happiness. So your dear and near, your relatives and friends need to have lot of affection for you, and they should also show sympathy. They should have a caring nature. Can we say that some periods of history were happier than the other? Is it possible to say that certain period in the history is happier than the other period? Nobody can doubt that we have fallen upon evil times. So we have come through certain happy times, certain evil times, again certain happy times. So in history it's all a mixture of happiness and sadness, anxiety, everything, every kind of feeling. And it seems to be true that we take public affairs much more tragically than we did in 18th century. Dr. Johnson lived through the America War, the greatest misfortune that has ever happened to the British Empire. But this is how he delivers himself about the public calamities. So Dr. Johnson is an English writer. He is a poet and an essayist. He is also known as a lexicographer. He has written the dictionary which is a landmark in English Language and Literature. The dictionary is titled Dictionary of the English Language, and it was published in the year 1755. So this dictionary has far-reaching effect on modern English. So Dr. Johnson has lived through the American War, which happened between the British and the Americans during the period of 1775 to 1783. So what does he say about public calamities, dangers? Boswell. Boswell is James Boswell, another writer who's a Scottish writer. He wrote the biography of Dr. Samuel Johnson. What does he say, Boswell? If I were in Parliament, I should be vexed if things went wrong. So if were in Parliament, I will be very much confused if things went wrong. Johnson, that can't, sir. Public affairs vex no man. And so public affairs cannot confuse any person. It is not personal affairs. It is not our personal matters to get confused. So public things will not matter to us. Boswell, have they not vexed you a little, sir? Have you not been vexed by all the turbulence of this reign? Johnson, sir, I have not slept an hour less, nor ate an ounce less meat. We are not so philosophical. There must be many thousands of Englishmen who lie himself and were awake all night after the first ominous bulletin about Jutland, which seemed to hint at a great naval disaster. But all through the war, when things were looking bad, I tried to remember another scene from the English history. We are told that in the days of Commonwealth, Bulstrode Whitelock, who's an ambassador to the Hague, was tossing about through the night in anxiety about the conditions in his country. First, initially, he says that public affairs will not vex, will not confuse anyone, but later on he talks about the great naval disaster in Jutland, and he says that Bulstrode Whitelock, who is an ambassador to the Hague, was very much anxious about the conditions of his country. An old servant lying in the same room addressed him. Sir, may I ask you a question? So there is a servant in the room, so he asked a question. Certainly, replied the ambassador. Sir, did God govern the world well before you came in it? So he is asking a very difficult question. Before you ruled this country, did God govern this world? Undoubtedly. Then, sir, can you not trust him to rule the world well when you are in it? Said, then why do you have to be so tense? Then why do you have to be so anxious about the situation of the world? You can just hand over it to the God. You can just hand over the situations to the hands of God, and he will keep the world well while you are the ruler in it. So you don't have to be bothered about it. So this this remark has an everlasting impact on this person, and the ambassador, turned on her side and fell asleep. So this one reply could give happiness to the ambassador. That is all about the prose happy people. So let us discuss certain important points that we have already discussed while reading the essay, so that you can build a summary of this lesson. Yes, here you have certain important points which you have to include while writing a short summary of happy people. You can write it in your own words without any difficult big terms and all. You can use simple words and write the summary. So let us discuss these important points. William Ralphing is an important British writer, a clergyman, scholar and social critic. The prose Happy People, written by William Ralphing, finds answer to the question, who are happy people? It is very simple, very readable and understandable. According to the writer, people do not show their true feelings on their face. Ing justifies the statement with a quotation from King Solomon. Proverbs of Solomon mentions that no one else can really understand how happy or sad a stranger is. So nobody can understand what is going on in our heart. Only our close relation, only our close friends can understand our real character. Even Robert Browning said that the real character of people will be understood only by their close family members or best friends. The main aim of our life is to be happy. No person is either very happy or very sad. Happy people are those who are struggling to achieve success. So, those who are in the process of achieving their goal, achieving their success, are happy. It is generally believed that young people are happier than old, but Ing is doubtful about this. He believes that old people are happier than the young because old people has had lot of experiences and they now have come to a saturation state where they can face any tough situation. So they are happy and they understand better about life. The writer believes that married people are happier than unmarried. The main reason for this is that married people do not commit suicide. Happiest people are those who are happy without any particular reason. We have discussed all these things. They are happy as they simply feel to be happy. Nobody wishes to be the happiest person, as the state of utmost happiness will be that of a lunatic, will be that of a mad person. There are lots of people who suffer from depression. The biographies of great people makes us understand that many great people suffered from depression. No great work was written out of happiness. So, worry is also rated as a sin along with other seven deadly sins. And after that, the writer says that religion is a great source of happiness for many people. Happiness that Hindu saints and Christian missionary experience are different from the happiness that common people experience. He takes the example of Sadhu Sundar Singh, who had a very difficult life. He lived in the bottom of well in Tibet among the decaying corpses for 2 years. Still, he experienced happiness similar to that of Jesus Christ. Busy people are more happy than the idle. According to King Solomon, wisdom, happiness, and recognition create meaning for life. Napoleon Bonaparte considers a hard heart and good digestion as reasons for happiness. Faith in God can give happiness. To justify this, he gives the examples of Dr. Johnson and other Englishmen like the ambassador and also Boswell to prove this point. So I hope you are clear about whatever we have discussed about the prose happy people so far. So read the prose on your own. You can take the screenshot of these important points and you can write a very readable, comprehensible summary based on this. Thank you, students. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.